How's it going today, YouTube, and welcome back to Shainer's Mechanic Life. You have a Kubota skid steer and have problems with a pre-NOx sensor failing repeatedly, or even failing the first time. There may be something causing it to fail, or even if it's not failing, it could be causing it to throw a false code. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's get into it. A Kubota SVL95 here. It's flashing these warning lights. I got two codes, E9601 and E9521. Code description for E9521 is your pre-NOx sensor, and code E9601 is engine power limited SCR system. Basically, it's gone into limp mode because of the previous code. So with that code being for the pre-NOx sensor, I'm going to show you something I've run into in the past with these things. You know, it may not be a problem with the actual sensor. There may be something that's causing that sensor to throw a fault code. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So this is the system we're looking at, all your emission control stuff. So what happens is your engine's here, the exhaust comes out of the engine, through this pipe, through all this stuff, and out your tailpipe. This is your pre-NOx sensor. It bolts into the exhaust where it comes out of the engine. And this is your DEF injector, which injects the diesel exhaust fluid into the exhaust stream. It bolts on right here. What's supposed to happen is it sprays the DEF in, it goes in the exhaust, mixes through, does its thing. Now, if where it mounts, if it gets all corroded and the spray pattern's bad, or that injector itself is leaking, it is directly in line with your pre-NOx sensor. So what happens is it'll drip, ooze down the inside of the exhaust and contaminate the sensor. Not so much contaminate, but it'll just block off where the exhaust gases go through the sensor. So let me show you how to open this thing up and get to these parts. Now your NOx sensors are unable to tell the difference between too much NOx in the exhaust stream or too much ammonia in the system, which is one of the ingredients in the diesel exhaust fluid. So they'll throw codes for too high NOx, and it'll also throw a code if there's too much of the ammonia in the exhaust stream, which I think this is the problem with this one. Let's find out. So to get at the pre-NOx sensor, you got to lift the cab up, which is actually easier than you think. You just undo these two bolts. They're 1 1/8 inch, and then you lift the cab up. Now before you go under the cab, there's supposed to be a stopper pin here that'll mechanically lock this cab from closing down, as well as that prop rod. This one is missing. I got a guy running me out one from a different unit. You don't want to be going underneath that without this locked. So once you got the cab open, you can get at the back of everything. Now before you go getting inside, make sure this is locked. That way you know the cab's not going to come down on you while you're working. So your pre-NOx sensor is this one right here. Now you can take that out by using an oxygen sensor socket or a 7/8 wrench. So we're going to crack this loose, pull the sensor out, and we're going to look for any sign of DEF. So that's the socket I was telling you about. I'll leave a link to that in the description if you're interested. Now usually I just crack it free with that and then go in with a stubby 7/8 wrench to finish it off, because access is pretty tight. So I got my inspection camera. I fed that in through the NOx sensor hole and went upwards to look at the DEF injector. As you can see, that's the injector there. You can see it's all wet from that injector leaking, and that's running down the pipe and contaminating our sensor. So when I pulled the sensor out, You could also see it was soaking wet with diesel exhaust fluid. So now we're going to pull that sensor and change it out. So I'm going to go ahead and put our sensor back in because we're pretty much done underneath the cab. And then we'll close the cab and we'll go at it from the top of the engine. So to safely lower the cab, just lift it up a little bit, pull this lock out, and then pull it down. And it'll start sliding down slowly by itself. Now you can put your bolts back in, and we'll go around to the other side. If you look inside the tailpipe, you can almost see that white residue for DEF. Looks like way too much is being pumped through the system. And when you open up the engine cover, you can also see trails of it leaking out that joint where the tailpipe bolts on. So to get at this, we have to undo these two clamps on both air hoses. Then we go up top and we lift the cooler out of the way. And once your hoses are off, make sure you put some rags over top of the piping. That way no debris falls in. Okay, next we undo all these bolts around the perimeter of this cover and pull the air cleaner lid off. That'll give us access we need. As well as this clamp that holds piping to the air cleaner housing. So once you get the cover off, put it up on the roof here, and same as usual, put rags and all your air hoses. So you can see better what I was talking about. This is your DEF injector. What was happening is that was leaking, running directly down the pipe and contaminating our NOx sensor. So we're going to change this out. So once you undo your electrical connector, these are quick connects. They're actually quite easy. You just squeeze these two pieces of the clamp together and the hose will pop off. Just like so. Little tip, if these quick connectors are a little bit tough, blow them up with suppressed air, and even when you squeeze them, push them in all the way and then squeeze them. Just helps you out a little bit. So now by simply just using an Allen socket, you undo your clamp, pull the clamp off, and your injector will lift right out. So once you get the clamp out of your way, there's your gasket. Here's the tip of your injector. And it's wet, it's dripping. There's your problem. So here's our new part and the part number straight from Kubota. Comes with everything we need: new injector, gasket, and a new clamp. So now you just put it on the opposite way you took it off and start putting everything back together again. I usually just start the clamp. That way you can get all your lines on and make sure everything's pointed the right way, and then tighten everything down. Now all the connections, you just push right on until they click. Now you can go down, snug down the clamp. Okay, we're all tight down. Now you can go ahead, put all your covers back on, hoses, tighten everything up, then start it and run, check for leaks. Now you'll find it easier if you get your hoses and clamps on first before you bolt on the covers up top. Gives you a little bit of wiggle room with the hoses. So you can see the hoses are all on, clamps are tight. Let's go up top. Now anytime you got a big cover like this with lots of bolts, you want to start them all first before you torque everything down. That way you know everything's going to line up a lot easier. Okay, so now I'm going to start it up, let it run, look for any warning lights, any leaks, then run it through its paces for a little while, make sure no codes come back. Boy, even walking past this unit, you can smell the DEF in the exhaust. Now usually I'll disconnect the battery, hopefully that'll clear any remaining codes in there, and then start it up and run it through a few heat cycles, or if you're lucky, get it to do a regen. That should hopefully clear the rest of it out and you should have no further problems. Now once it starts doing its regen, make sure you've got the speed turned all the way up. And you can even just let it park and do its thing, or you can keep operating. Just make sure you keep it full throttle. Now generally the regeneration process should only take about 20-30 minutes or so. So just best bet is make sure you're operating it away from anything combustible and just let it do its thing, and make sure you have the throttle full throttle. Now once that light goes out, that means your regeneration process is completed. And the fact that no trouble codes came back and canceled the process means we're looking pretty good so far. So now I'm going to run the machine, put it through its paces, and if no codes come back, we're good to go. And if codes do come back, then that means we're going to have to contact the dealer or someone that'll have the laptop and the proper software to diagnose this a little bit further. Well, as you can see, we've run this machine about 30 hours and no problems have popped up. Now if you have those codes that came up at the beginning of the video, you know there still is a good chance that you may need a pre-NOx sensor, but definitely shows it pays to take a look before you go ordering some expensive parts. Just because a code says it's for that doesn't mean it's that part. Take a little time, do some research, and take a look at other things while you're working. Hope you found this video helpful. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Hit that like button and subscribe, and hit that bell button so you get notified when we get more videos coming out. Just want to thank everybody that subscribed to my channel. Thumbs up. Appreciate all my subscribers. Well, that's it for tonight, everybody. Have a good night, and thanks for watching.